The radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Wednesday, January 15th. I fear a day will go down in history as god awful, as a god awful day. Anyway, yes, there is a deal, a hostage deal. It has been now finalized. We talked about this yesterday, but now it looks like it's a done deal, although I keep reading tweets saying this guy's denied it or that guy's denied it, but no other than Donald Trump has confirmed that there is a deal, and I guess if he's confirmed it, then there is a deal, no question. And for those of you who are skeptical about, this deal coming around because of Trump pressure, or that this is a deal Trump wanted, or that Trump wouldn't abandon Israel in this way, or anything like that, Trump basically announced how he feels about the deal a few minutes ago. I think a few minutes ago, yes, we can say a few minutes ago, on Truth Social. This is Donald Trump. This epic ceasefire agreement could have only happened as a result of our historic victory in November, as it signaled to the entire world that my administration would seek peace and negotiate deals to ensure the safety of all Americans and our allies. I am thrilled American and Israeli hostages will be returning home to be reunited with their families and loved ones. With this deal in place, my national security team, through the efforts of Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, will continue to work closely with Israel and our allies to make sure Gaza never again becomes a terrorist state safe haven. Yeah, right. We will continue promoting peace through strength throughout the region, and I would just add by twisting the arms of our allies to capitulate. Anyway, as we build upon the momentum of this ceasefire to further expand the historic Abraham Accords, this is only the beginning of great things to come for America and indeed the world. We have achieved so much without even being in the White House. Just imagine all the wonderful things that will happen when I return to the White House and my administration is fully confirmed so they can secure more victories for the United States. I mean, seriously, with victories like this, who needs defeat? Who needs defeat? All right. So here's the deal. There is an agreement, a ceasefire agreement, in 3 phases, with really only the first phase fully articulated and fully specified. But the first phase will last 42 days. During those 42 days, Hamas will release 33 hostages. They will be women, children, and men over the age of 50. As it turns out, and this is not, I don't know that this has been confirmed, but this is what I'm reading, so I don't take me at these accurate numbers, but these numbers are probably right, or close to right. Only 23 of the 33 that are going to be released are actually alive. That is, the 33 includes 10 bodies of dead women and children, or adults over the age, or men over the age of 50. And 23 actual hostages that are alive. During this phase, as these hostages are released, again, 23 live ones, 10 bodies, Israel will release 1,300 terrorists from its prisons. At least 200 of those are sitting in prison for murder, for terrorist attacks that resulted in death Others might have attempted murder, but didn't actually achieve murder, so they don't count. But so only about 200 will be murderers, successful murderers. Those successful murderers will be released into into a country that is not the West Bank or Gaza, but the other 1,000 or so will be released into the Palestinian territories. In other words, they will be released, and as they get home, guns and knives will be handed to them so they can resume their terrorist activities that they got before. So here is the art of the deal. For 23 live hostages, you released 1,300. I mean, wow. This guy plays 5D chess and achieves deals that no human being on planet Earth could even imagine. In addition, right? By the way, that is it. That's all Hamas is going to do. Release these hostages. Israel, on the other hand, not only is releasing 1,300, but it is withdrawing troops from all, residential areas in Gaza, including the Netzarim corridor, which is the corridor that separates north and south. It will allow Palestinians to move back into the north with monitoring of whether they are bringing weapons with them or not, to be left to some kind of joint X-ray mission run by the always reliable, always friendly, always trustworthy Qataris and Egyptians, who will make sure that no weapons are smuggled north into the north of Gaza. Israel will still occupy the Philadelphia corridor in the south, the border with Egypt, for the first phase of the deal. Now, that means that there will still be 65 hostages still held by Hamas. Again, not clear how many of those 65 are still alive and how many are just bodies. Those will all be men, 50 age or less. They will be released in a phase 2 once agreements are set in to see the complete withdrawal of all Israeli forces from the Gaza, including the Philadelphia corridor. And then basically, phase 3 will involve commitments for reconstruction of Gaza and governance of Gaza moving into the future. So how many billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars will the Trump administration, other Western countries, Qataris, the Saudis, and others be pouring into Gaza to rebuild it, and whether Hamas will be allowed, I don't see what the option is, to continue to govern Gaza or not. And that will be in phase 3. That will also involve a commitment by Israel that the war has ended, that it is thoroughly surrendered, that it is given up, or in other words, the war has ended. In other words, it is given up on its goal of the complete destruction and annihilation of Hamas as a military and political entity. So that is the deal. That is, we'll get more details of it in the hours to come. This is a massive, in my view, a massive victory for Hamas. It is a massive victory for the Qataris, the Qatari government. And of course, Qatar will come out really, really strong out of this. Qatar, the current home of the Muslim Brotherhood, the Islamist organization. This is a devastating loss to Israel, even though Israel seems to be pretending that it isn't. I read one commentary that said, yeah, I mean, this is a massive loss, but it was inevitable because this was the consequence of October 7th. This is just a continuation of what we did on October 7th. And there's just no way around the fact that this is a loss. This is a PR victory for Trump. He will go into his inauguration claiming a massive victory, releasing American hostages, bringing peace to the world. He'll be the peace giver. But, you know, this is early warning, early indication of just how awful, disgusting Trump really is, how awful his next 4 years are likely to be, the extent to which he's willing to stab, maybe the closest ally the United States has in the back and then twist the knife inside of them. This is a message to every Islamist in the world to take hostages. It's a message, indeed, to every dictator in the world to take hostages. It works. Taking hostages works. It's it's just a no-risk strategy. The West will always capitulate. And you can get pretty much whatever you want from them. It's hard for me to express. It's hard for me to express how disgusted I am by this and by Donald Trump. It showed that Trump can squeeze Israel. So Hamas gave nothing here. Hamas got everything that it wanted. Hamas got all of its conditions. The only people who compromised, who gave anything up, who are actually weaker by this, the only people who compromised here are the Israelis. And what Trump proved is that he's very good at squeezing his friends, his allies, the good guys. And as I said yesterday, massive betrayal by the Trump administration of Israel. I'm sure Candace Owen and Tucker Carlson and all the other anti-Semites in the MAGA coalition are just loving this. They think this is amazing and a blast. It sets Israel back. Now, it's true, Israel's done a lot of damage to Hamas, and it's done a lot of damage to Iran, and Hamas will never be, or it's going to take a long, long time for Hamas to be the kind of threat that it was on October 7th, so let's not exaggerate this. Israel is not at any existential risk of failure, other than the kind of existential risk that you face when you know you've just compromised all your principles. And one has to say that at the end of the deal, most of the pressure to get this deal done came from within Israel. It came from the population itself. Trump was just the one who had the ability and the willingness to, but really the ability and the leverage to actually twist Netanyahu's arm into getting this deal. Now, I've heard some trying to justify this as saying that, Drin says Ben Shapiro is already defending Trump. That is unbelievable to me. It's just unbelievable that Ben Shapiro, I don't believe Ben Shapiro for 1 minute believes that. I don't believe Ben Shapiro thinks this is a good deal. I don't believe Ben Shapiro thinks Donald Trump did a good thing here. That is the ultimate in sleazy pandering to his audience. I mean, that is so disappointing of Ben, and it shows that no matter what, I mean, take Israel's security as one of Ben's highest values. That means he will never, under any circumstances, do anything to criticize Trump. I mean, what will Trump have to do now to get the Ben Shapiros of the world to criticize him? I mean, here's Wyatt, right? Another God. It's a better deal than what Kamala would have tried to force him to accept. Yeah, the difference is that Netanyahu would have told Kamala to jump. By the way, this is an exact deal that Biden proposed. It's the exact deal that Kamala would have tried Israel to accept. It's no better. No better. There's no aspect of this that is any better than anything Biden tried. Biden, this is the deal Biden's been trying to get Israel to accept for 6 months. And as always, it took somebody from the right, it took Trump to get the left's agenda across. This is like a leftist move. This is a woke move. This is a stab your friends in the back move. Kamala would have never been able to get away with this. Trump could. Trump could do the leftist thing. Kamala couldn't. But no, Wyatt and Ben Shapiro and all these so-called friends of Israel will justify. Trump could literally shoot an innocent person in the middle of 6th Avenue, and Wyatt would justify him, and Ben Shapiro would justify him. I mean, Trump could literally try to overturn an election that went against him, literally do everything he could to stay in the White House even though he lost an election, and Wyatt and Ben Shapiro would justify what he's done. I mean, let's wait and see. When Trump calls, who knows what, when he calls troops into the streets of America to bring order and stability, Wyatt and Ben Shapiro will justify it. Yes, Wyatt, you are in good company with Ben Shapiro, no question. You are both sellouts of reason, both selling out America, selling out principles. That's who you guys are now. That, you know, as if we needed more proof of the extent to which that is true, we now fully have it. So there were a few people with some integrity that are criticizing this deal online, but not many. It is sad. And a lot of Israelis are criticizing this deal. A lot of commentators from Israel are criticizing this. One guy says, can't imagine a worse deal. Patrick Fox, says, this is why Islamic terrorists take hostages, because they know it works. Anytime we reinforce that lesson by giving something of value in exchange for their return, we are ensuring it will happen again. Bad deal. There's more here and there saying this. Israeli intelligence sources are now leaking that Israel has known where the hostages were the whole time, but they were heavily guarded and closely guarded, and every time Israel tried to go save them, they took a step back because they feared that they would all be killed. So they're making every effort to try to rationalize this and to justify this. There is no rationalization. There's no justification. And Ben Shapiro, you should be ashamed of yourself. All right, for supporting this because it's a Trump deal. If this had been the same deal, exact same deal, had been cut, and this is true of Wyatt, had been cut under Biden, you would be condemning it as treasonous, as horrific, as terrible. You basically completely lost all integrity. All right, I mean, it is what it is. It's a done deal. It's happening. At the end of the day, Israel is more secure now than it was before October 7th. Hamas is weaker, but Hamas will get strong quickly. The tens of gazillions of dollars that will flow into Gaza over the coming years, rebuilding not only the buildings up on top, but the tunnels underneath, rearming them, resupplying them. Israel will pay one day in a distant future maybe I won't see that day, will pay a heavy toll, a heavy, heavy, heavy toll for this. Drin says that Barry Weiss is doing the same. I mean, it doesn't surprise me. Barry Weiss has been turning into a Trumpist. But look, this is partially the pull of the heartstrings. I mean, it's going to be a few weeks of very inspiring images. We're going to see hostages released. We're going to see hostages reunited with their families. And in a world where somebody like Barry Weiss and maybe someone like Ben Shapiro, but I think this is not true of Ben Shapiro, can't imagine what victory actually looks like, what destroying the enemy actually means. In a world where that is just not possible. I get it. They think this is the best that you can do, and this is life, and this is how it is. And compromise is necessary. But that's because they lack the willingness because of altruism to imagine victory, to imagine a war aimed at victory, to imagine what it would look like to actually defeat Hamas. The altruism does not allow them to even consider it. Well, maybe some people who voted for Trump are regretting it today. I'll just put that out there. All right. If they're not regretting it, maybe they should. Let's see. All right, that's enough about that. I mean, we'll be talking about it more. And as I said, they're going to be very heartwarming, positive. And look, how can you not celebrate people being released and going back home and reuniting with their families? I mean, these people are all going to be, all going to be. I like how people know who's regretting it and who's not. They have inside information. They have a direct link. The fact that that people are going to go home, that they're going to be reunited, the fact that they're going to have been traumatized by the experience, that it's going to take them months, years to overcome that trauma. I mean, at the end of the day, all right, it's a done deal. It's done. I'm happy for the people who are being released. I'm happy for their families. I hope that the hostages that are not released in phase one will ultimately be released and that they get to reunited with their families. And, I hope they have healthy recoveries and they do well. Again, the price is a heavy price. It's a price Israel, as I say, it seems like every few years I say this, it's a price Israel will pay heavily, heavily, heavily for in the future. But so be it. It is what it is. And yep. All right. Let's see. So that is the hostage deal, and the war in Gaza is, for all intents and purposes, at least for now, over. Let's see what happens. I mean, there's the possibility that this is a big fake that Trump and Netanyahu are doing, and that as soon as phase one is over, they will go in and crush Hamas, and they'll get the 33 hostages, and they'll go in and they'll destroy the remnants of Hamas, and that is quite possible. Maybe they'll even attack the Iranian nuclear program and replace the Iranian regime. I mean, if you want to be positive and delude yourself for a few more weeks, you can believe that. But I really don't think that is happening. All right, talk about, and by the way, today's show will be a little short. I'm teaching a class at 5 o'clock, so we'll be limited by that. But 5 o'clock my time, 4 o'clock Eastern time. But feel free to ask questions, particularly $20 questions. Those are particularly good. Yesterday, ton of $20 questions. That was great. Thank you. All right, let's see. Talk about the military and winning and national defense and everything. We yesterday had the confirmation hearings for a new Secretary of Defense, Hegseth. I think I'm pronouncing that right. If I'm not, somebody will correct me. Hegseth is the nominee, and it looks like after yesterday he will be. I think he will be confirmed unless there are new revelations. Like usually with these confirmation hearings, it's just one disappointment after another, primarily not of the candidate themselves, although in this case there were quite a few disappointments there as well, but primarily of the senators asking the questions. I mean, it was just pathetic, particularly Republicans. Just pathetic. Basically, they asked him, do you think, in spite of the fact that you've been known to be a heavy drinker, do you think you can still manage the Department of Defense with 3 million employees and a massive budget? What is it, 800 billion or 900 billion budget? Do you think you can drink and drive at the same time? Well, he committed to not drinking while being Secretary of Defense. How likely is that? How likely is that? It was pretty funny. And then, I mean, it was almost like, are you committed to never harassing women again, or at least as long as you're defense secretary? We really don't want our defense secretary harassing women and potentially even raping them. I think he committed to that. Okay, Oyvind says on Ben Shapiro, it does not look like he's liking the deal. He's coping, but he does not seem happy. Yeah. But is he criticizing Trump for cutting this deal? Is he willing to do that? That's the question. In spite of the fact that in the past, repeatedly, Hegseth has said that he does not support women in combat, he has basically cut a deal with Senator Joni Ernst, Republican from Iowa, who is a woman who was in combat, he basically yesterday confirmed that he will support women in combat roles. So he will not, that's a deal, and it looks like Joni Ernst will vote for his confirmation. I mean, there were all kinds of questions. He spent a lot of time, I'd say most of his time, opening statement, and then a lot of the questions from Republicans led him to talk about DEI in the Defense Department, getting rid of it. You talk about LGBTQ, women in combat, all these issues, and almost nothing, really almost nothing about, I don't know. I mean, imagine a senator. I mean, if I was senator, what would I ask him? I'd ask him questions like, what do you think the chances are that over the next 4 years, the United States will be at war with China? Do you think American forces are ready for such a war if there is any kind of likelihood it would happen? What would you recommend to President Trump as actions to maybe avoid such a war, if that is possible? What would you do to make changes at the Defense Department to prepare the nation for a potential war with China? I mean, those are some of the questions I would ask. I'd want to know. I mean, I don't think he's qualified. His resume is very, 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 very thin, and I think that's way too positive. He has no experience that would justify him being Secretary of Defense. He's never managed anything. He ran a budget for a nonprofit that he managed to screw up. He's never managed a significant number of people, and when he has, he was not a particularly good manager. He has shown no strategic ability to think. So I would want to see, can he think strategically? Does he have strategy? He's going to be one of the people advising Donald Trump on foreign policy, on military aspects of foreign policy. And what I got out of the hearing yesterday, this confirmation hearing, was I'll basically do what Donald Trump wants me to do. And what will you do if Donald Trump tells you to do something that is illegal? Oh, Donald Trump would never do something like that. I refuse to consider a hypothetical that paints such a negative view of Donald Trump. When he was asked about specifics about Asia or about, he had no clue what he was talking about. So he was asked about the countries in the ASEAN, ASEAN, that is a confederation of Asian states, that the United States and China both participate in their meetings and are constantly dodging to try to have more or less influence over them. When asked who is in Asian, Hegseth included South Korea, Japan, and Australia. None of those countries is actually in Asia, and it's much more countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam, and I think Cambodia and Thailand and other countries like that, rather than South Korea, Japan, and Australia. But he doesn't know that. Now, okay, that's fine. But it's not like when he was asked about our nuclear program and, on nuclear programs, he knew what he was talking about. He didn't. He has no conception of what all that involved. Yes, Hegseth was in the military, had a decent career in the military, never led large groups of men. Again, just not qualified by any measure. He was a Fox TV host. He's good on one thing. He's good on this idea of, he's probably anti-just war theory. He was good on, not taking too seriously the Geneva Convention and things like that. He was good on increasing the fighting spirit in the army. But the reality is that the next war is probably not going to be won or lost based on the fighting spirit of the men and women in the American military. The next war is probably going to be won or lost based on technology and based on strategic thinking and based on strategic preparation for such a war. We are not going to be fighting, I think, wars in the near future involving tanks and special forces always, but tanks and infantry and things like that. Our wars are going to be fought with drones and a lot with the Air Force and the Navy, and a lot of that, hopefully, will be unmanned because that's what the Chinese are going to do, and they dominate. The one thing he did say was that for Trump, and of course, he just does what Trump tells him. Trump's his boss. For Trump, a big priority, a big priority is going to be shipbuilding for the Navy, is going to be one of the absolute top priorities for the Trump administration. Shipbuilding, which the United States does not do, not do well, does very poorly. But it needs to bring the shipbuilding jobs back home, I guess. If the United States wants to catch up with China in terms of shipbuilding capabilities, in terms of Navy ships, warships, then the best bet in the short run, and in the long run, I think, that the United States can make is invest heavily in South Korean and Japanese shipbuilding capability and let them build our ship for us. We should utilize our allies' strengths. South Korea and Japan are excellent at shipbuilding. And the United States is not going to catch up, not in the next 4 years. And we don't have the skilled labor. We don't have the tech. We've just lost that capability. It takes us, I don't know, years and years and years and years to build an aircraft carrier. And it's not clear to me we need aircraft carriers. We might need 1,000 boat drones. Yeah, but that's a thing. Strategy. But shipbuilding, steel, iron, hot hats, real jobs for real men. That's what the Trump administration is about. Not about actually winning or about strategy or about figuring out what the real threat is and how to defeat the real threat. That would involve too much thinking. So yeah, I'm not super confident about this defense secretary's ability to bring the United States military into the 21st century and into a competitive position with the rest of the world, with China. Sorry, not the rest of the world, China. Our Navy's better and our military's better than China, but it's going to have to hustle to keep that edge. And hustle means tech. Hustle means deploy technology. Hustle will mean think outside the box, think strategically, think in new ways on how to deal with and defeat our enemies. And I don't see that coming out of this White House. Hegseth is pretty obsessed about getting rid of any remnant of DEI in the military. I'm all for that. That's good. He also, by the way, wants to, just in case just to completely destroy woke completely, he also wants to change the names of a bunch of military bases back to their Confederate names. Right? This is a high priority because this is how we defeat China, and this is how we reinvigor the energy of our troops is by bringing back statues of Jefferson Davis or General Lee, or calling our Navy and other bases back on the names of racists who fought for the preservation of slavery and who are basically committed treason against the United States government. That's how we should reinvigorate the fighting spirit of Americans and fight and destroy woke. It's pretty pathetic. Yeah. All right. Talk about woke. Meta has, and generally, we've talked about this on the show, how American businesses are retreating from their woke position. This is something that started about a year ago, but is accelerated now that Trump won the election. And in a sense, the American people have, the one lesson I think from this election was taken, whether it's true or not, the one lesson was that the American people don't like woke, don't support woke, don't want woke, and that the Trump administration will actively fight woke. American businesses are, kind of hustling to do away with DEI programs. Amazon announced that it will do away with some of its DEI programs. Not clear which ones, but some of the DEI programs at Amazon are going to go away. And Meta, Facebook, has announced that they will be ending their DEI programs. They sent a memo to their people, and basically this is how they explain it. The legal and policy landscape surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in the United States is changing. The Supreme Court of the United States has recently made decisions signaling a shift in how the courts will approach DEI. This is related to universities. I don't think it has anything to do with private employment. But anyway, it's a good excuse to the employees. It reaffirms longstanding principles that discrimination should not be tolerated or promoted on the basis of inherent characteristics. Yeah. Why were you doing it then, Meta? The term DEI, it continues, has also become charged, in part because it is understood by some as a practice that suggests preferential treatment of some groups over others. Isn't that the whole point of DEI? Preferential treatment of some groups over others is exactly the point of DEI. So they're pretending it wasn't what it was. I don't know what they're doing. This is a dodging kind of... At Meta, we have a principle of serving everyone. This can be achieved through cognitively diverse teams, with differences in knowledge, skills, political views, backgrounds, perspectives, and experiences. Such teams are better at innovating, solving complex problems, and identifying new opportunities, which ultimately help us deliver on our ambition to build products that serve everyone. On top of that, we've always believed that no one should be given or deprived of opportunities because of protected characteristics, and that has not changed. So, they're talking about on hiring, we will continue to source candidates from different backgrounds, but we will stop using the diverse slate approach. Good. He wrote, we previously ended representation goals for women and ethnic minorities. Good. We are sunsetting our supplier diversity efforts within our broader supplier strategy. Brilliant. Instead of equity and inclusion training programs, we will build programs that focus on how to apply fair and consistent practices that mitigate bias for all, no matter your background. Good. I hope those are good. Who knows what those will be. We know we will no longer have a team focused on DEI. So that is gone, that whole team. All right, here are the new principles. We serve everyone. We are committed to making our products accessible, beneficial, and universally impactful for everyone. They haven't made it impactful and universal for me because I still don't get Facebook. 2, we build the best teams with the most talented people. It took Donald Trump to get elected for them to say that. We drive consistency in employment practices and ensuring fairness and objectivity for all. We build connection and community. Yeah, all right, so it's great news. It's good news. Meta is stopping the DEI programs. This is good. This is the backlash that's been going on for over a year now against DEI programs and woke more broadly. I called peak woke at some point. Maybe I called it too early, but it does seem like it's in decline. Some of it will be institutionalized, but some of it clearly seems to be fading and disappearing. In addition, Meta also revised its content moderation policies. No longer, and I think we talked about this a few days ago, no longer will they have a third party, external party checking, fact-checking everything and determining what was okay or not. They will replace all that by user-generated community labeling. Now, it's not clear exactly how this will work. It's not clear what this will entail. Will the ban on me using Facebook ads to promote my show go away? Will I now be allowed to do it without any reasonable doubt that I live in Puerto Rico and I'm not a bot? Will that requirement that is horrendous, for me anyway, go away? I don't know. We will find out. I'll try to do some advertising for some of my shows and see what happens. I was labeled a political commentator and therefore could not advertise. Will that all go away? We'll see. And but all of this is now, Meta is repositioning itself to a less woke or non-woke or woke, where woke is less, I guess where woke is less powerful, less impactful politically and maybe culturally. And it's positioning itself for that kind of world. We will see how it goes for Meta. To what extent that actually helps. All right, let's see. Yes, we talked about the LA fires yesterday, and I talked about the evils of price controls and gouging and how price controls have led to some of these problems by not allowing insurance prices to adjust to actual risk of fire, which leads to overbuilding in certain areas that are prone to fires. How insurance companies have been restricted in those ways. Well, and I also talked about the fact that Gavin Newsom, on the one hand, said, we're going to speed up building, we're going to get rid of a bunch of regulations, but he also then imposed price controls on gouging. Well, Gavin Newsom is not one to limit his price controls and his intervention in markets. Just one or two simple things. I mean, this is a guy who wants to run the world, who wants to be your central planner. So today, he signed an executive order prohibiting greedy land developers, and I'm reading from his Twitter. I'll just read it the way it's written. Today, I signed an executive order prohibiting greedy land developers from ripping off LA wildfire victims with unsolicited, undervalued offers to buy their destroyed property. Make no mistake, this is a prosecutable crime. Prosecutable crime. So if I go to somebody who's got a house there that just burned down and say, hey, listen, guy, sucks. I'll pay you some money and you just walk away and I'll build on your land, or you can take your insurance and you can take whatever money I give you for the land, and I can be prosecuted and sent to jail. It's a crime. In other words, the attempt to create a market to help people burnt out who have burnt out homes from getting themselves back on their feet and going out there into the world and having some money with them and starting afresh somewhere. Creating a market in that is now illegal. This is negative price gouging. Greedy people. How's he going to determine if they're greedy? Who's going to determine whether you're underpricing or not? I mean, this is just absurd and ridiculous. And this will cause real damage to real people. It'll slow down recovery. It'll, some people who this would be the exact solution, it would be very difficult for them to find buyers. Buyers are going to be very reluctant to step in and participate. These anti-market central planners who think they can judge the price of my property better than I can, who think that they should be in charge of who I should negotiate and what kind of terms I should get, destructive, despicable, and they're the ones who make it very difficult for areas that suffer from these kind of natural disasters, or natural combination of natural with man-made disasters, as this is, from recovering. And by the way, somebody criticized me and said, why are you attacking Newsom here? The fires here are no different than a hurricane in Florida, elsewhere, because those are red states and this is a blue state. You're criticizing politicians here, but you don't criticize there. I do criticize them there. It's the same problem. Insurance companies are not allowed to price insurance rationally. In Florida, a lot of the insurance policies that people buy who live in hurricane-prone areas, they are buying from the government. So there's no price mechanism to disincentivize people from building close to the coasts or in direct paths of hurricanes. And indeed, the insurance market in Florida is broken completely. And that is a massive disincentive. And we saw, that the authorities in these states are not very good at. The other aspect of this, of course, is FEMA. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. Federal bailout money that bails people out when these things happen, again, encourages people to live in risky areas, encourages people. And it doesn't matter if it's red or blue. These problems exist everywhere. Now, California is particularly bad because of the kind of environmental stuff, because of the Delta smelt fish, because of that plant that restricted building of widening fire lanes and replacing the poles from wood to metal. California is particularly bad because it has a water shortages that it shouldn't have. I mean, it's terrible all around. Drin says, just to make us feel good and to kind of raise our spirits a little bit, he says, yeah, these are the choices you have. Trump and J.D. Vance on the one side and Gavin Newsom and Liz Warren on the other. Yeah, shoot me now. Right? There's a choice for you. There's a choice. All right. Let's see. So what else? What else do we want to talk about? Yeah, something we talked about yesterday. If you remember, we talked about the external revenue service. Like instead of the internal revenue service, no, not instead of. In addition to the internal revenue service, we are now going to have the external revenue service. I failed to mention yesterday that we have an external revenue service. It's basically called customs. Customs and something. There is a government agency that is basically responsible today for accepting the money that importers collect for tariffs. Customs and duties. Thank you, Jennifer. Customs and duties. And so basically all Trump is doing is replacing the Customs and Duties Department with an external revenue service. Both collect the tariffs from American businesses who have collected the tariff from the American population when they sell the products. It's like a sales tax. They add the tariff to the product price, and then that addition gets paid to the government. So they do it exactly the same as a sales tax. Customs and Border Protection, is that it? Is that the department? Anyway, whatever it is, there's nothing new here. It's not a new department. There's no new department. All right, this is kind of an interesting fact that has to do with demographics that I read about today, which is interesting. So it turns out that given how few kids we're all having, given the birth rate collapsing and the aging population, and in particular, if you take into account, efforts to dramatically shrink immigration, the world's richest economies, and we're talking about UK, Germany, Japan, and including the US, in order to maintain GDP per capita growth rates at the same level as they have been since the 90s, which is generally is nothing to write home about. No, these are not great GDP per capita growth rates, but they're positive at least. And in America, they're much better than they are in UK, Germany, and Japan. Japan particularly has seen pretty flat. But to maintain whatever they are, which is pretty bleak to begin with, and GDP per capita grows because basically two phenomena, two things grow GDP. One, and therefore per capita, but even GDP per capita. One is increased productivity, and second is more workers with increased productivity. Like more workers without increased productivity, GDP per capita doesn't grow. So at the core is productivity growth, but more workers, less workers, right? GDP starts shrinking. Fewer people producing stuff, fewer people making stuff, GDP starts shrinking. So to grow GDP per capita, you need more workers and greater productivity growth. Well, US is about to start shrinking in 10 or so years, depending on the numbers you look at. But at the end of the day, in order to maintain GDP per capita growth the way it's been since the 90s, these countries are going to have at least double productivity growth. So productivity is going to have to go up much, much faster. This is maybe the promise of AI. So for example, France and Italy are going to have to triple their productivity growth because their population is going to shrink relatively fast. Spain is going to have to fourfold their productivity growth to keep GDP per capita growing at the rate it's been growing since the 90s. The United States is going to have to close to double it. Not easy. That's just to keep growing at a pretty pathetic rate that we are. And of course, you could solve that. At least these rich countries could solve it by increasing immigration. The right kind of immigration would solve this problem. But I think that's probably off the table for most countries in the foreseeable future. Just note, because we talked about this in the past, that South Korea's president has now been detained and questioned. He is basically in prison or in detention. Police used ladders to climb over barricades made of buses to get into the presidential residency, and enable prosecutors to speak directly to Yoon, who is still, in a sense, president, even though he doesn't have any of the presidential power, but he hasn't vacated the job yet. All for, if you remember, his attempt to impose martial law a few weeks ago. Prosecutors had a warrant for Yoon's arrest, which a court issued, and which the president has ignored. Yoon's presidential security detail offered little resistance, and he has actually now been detained. All right, and then finally, some good news. Let's end on a good news, and then I'll go to your questions. Thank you, Wes. That is incredibly generous. Thank you for the $50. A scientist in Israel at the Weizmann Institute in Israel, says that she and her team of researchers are very close to developing a groundbreaking immunotherapy treatment that could help boost the immune system. And by doing so, interestingly enough, she is claiming they will be able to slow the aging process. And in particular, they believe this will have positive implications for cognitive diseases. That is, if you can boost the immune system, the body's immune system, if you can keep the body's immune system young, then the body's immune system will take care of the rest. It will work to prevent Alzheimer's. It will work to deal with cancerous cells. The research just appeared in a peer-reviewed journal, Neuron. Schwartz is a 2023 Israel Prize recipient. That's like the top prize for scientists in Israel. She was the first to discover that the brain is highly dependent on the immune system for its lifelong maintenance and function. She spent the last 27 years studying the connection between the immune system and the aging brain. And they now believe that an intervention to boost the immune system could potentially slow or even halt the aging of the brain as well as the body. Super exciting. And, it's a lot of people are working on a variety of different immunotherapies, a variety of different ways in which, ways in which we can boost the body's own immune system to fight off diseases and to fight, including things like Alzheimer's, it turns out. All right, let me see. Got something interesting here. Where's the actual website? All right, 1, 2, 3. Where is this? Come on. Where's the website? There it is. Is it there? All right. Not sure exactly, but all right. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it. That'll be the news for Wednesday, January 15th, and I will turn to your questions. Let me first thank my sponsors, Alex Epstein. Alex Epstein is, of course, from alexepstein.substack.com. He is the world's leading expert on all things fossil fuel, energy, climate change, and environmentalism. He's actually about to launch a policy platform his whole policy platform. Before inauguration, you can go to the interview he just did with Jordan Peterson to get kind of highlights from that or the summary of that. But he will be launching, and you can also, if you go to his Twitter subscription, if you just follow him on Twitter, this is how he starts it off. It may seem impossible, but 4 years from now, American can have 1, record oil and gas production; 2, cheap, plentiful, reliable electricity; 3, high environmental quality; 4, low climate danger; and 5, nuclear renaissance. Here are the 25 policy changes that will get us there. And he lists them. 25 policy changes that gets us these outcomes. This is the kind of work Alex does. He is likely to have, I think, that he's going to have significant influence in the Trump administration. Energy is the one shining bright spot within the Trump administration. I think real progress, a real revolution potentially is happening here. A real revolution towards free markets and towards freedom and towards energy abundance is going to happen with Chris Wright as energy secretary. And there's a strategy. Alex articulates it here with 25 policy changes, so concrete things. Now, if you subscribe to his Substack, you will get access to this kind of stuff. So go follow him on Twitter, subscribe to his Substack, get access to his Alex AI. All of that is super exciting. And if there's going to be an optimistic, positive aspect to this whole Trump phenomena, it's going to be on the energy front. So help Alex sustain his influence by going and subscribing and following Alex everywhere you can. And by the way, the Jordan Peterson interview is excellent, so I encourage you to do that, watch that as well. All right, let's see. And then, of course, the Ayn Rand Institute is a sponsor of the show. Ayn Rand Institute has its annual Ayn Rand conference for particularly for students interested in a deep dive into Ayn Rand's ideas. It is being held at the end of February in Austin, Texas, or towards the end of February in Austin, Texas. You can apply for a scholarship if you are a student, if you might have ambitions to be a new intellectual. You can apply for a scholarship. The scholarship covers your expenses getting to the conference. You can find information about the scholarship and more information about the conference. You can also attend for a fee if you don't want a scholarship at aynrand.org/start here. Aynrand.org/start here. And sign up for the conference. It's going to be in Austin, Texas, towards the end of February. And it's going to have terrific speakers, engaging talks and seminars. And you'll learn a huge amount about objectivism and get to know personally get to know a lot of the intellectuals, but also get to know fellow students, other people who are interested in these ideas. It is an amazing fun. All right. Finally, I'll just mention that if you want to support the Yaron Brook Show, it is a listener-supporter show. And if you listen, whether through a podcast or whether here on YouTube, you are hopefully receiving a value. You're pursuing a value for value. And the value you can exchange this for is a subscription on Patreon or on PayPal. Monthly contribution towards the show. You can go to Patreon and put in Yaron Brook Show. You can become a member. $10 a month on Patreon gets you the podcast ad-free with no advertising. And but yeah, you can do anything from a couple of bucks a month to $1,000 a month. It's up to you. I greatly appreciate it. It's the only reason I can do this show. Couldn't do this show. Would have to look for a different profession. If not for the support I get from all of you guys on Patreon, you guys on Super Chat, you know, and you guys on PayPal. So thank you to all of you. All right, let's see. Super chat. Let's just thank some of our stickers. Stickers are super chats without questions. Enric, thank you. John, thank you. Wes, $50. Thank you. Martin, thank you. Silvanos, $20. Really, thank you. Oyvind and Nilfu and Jasper and Alan. Thank you, guys. Thank you for the stickers. Let me remind everybody that I'll go as long as I have questions, although, and I don't have a lot of questions right now. We are short a little bit of our 1 hour goal. We're not going to go much over an hour, but we are going to go over an hour. We're already over an hour. So please consider doing either $20 questions or 50, 100 to get us to the goal quickly here. That would be phenomenal if we actually achieved that goal. So we didn't dig ourselves into a little bit of a budgetary hole. Okay, James, do altruist intellectuals know how deep altruism goes in people's psyche? Even after studying objectivism for a while, altruistic inclinations still pop up from your subconscious when certain scenarios arise in life. Absolutely. I mean, we are raised with altruism. The entire culture around us is altruistic. No, I don't think people know, because I don't think they name it that way. I don't think they think about it in that way. I mean, they don't think in terms of morality. They don't think in terms of, explicitly, in terms of altruism and people altruistic and how many people are altruistic. Indeed, they think people are not altruistic because clearly people are not altruistic enough. So many of them spend so much time pursuing their own interests to some extent or another, right? So I think most altruistic intellectuals are complaining about the fact that people are not altruistic enough, that it doesn't go deep enough into the culture. But the fact that our culture is riddled with guilt, the fact that we're willing to give up everything to help the weak and the poor and the suffering, the fact that we're willing to condemn whole cultures for the fact that they're successful, it just shows how deep and entrenched altruism really is, and it really is in every aspect. And it rises up in your own life probably when somebody asks you for help and you really don't want to help them, but you find it difficult to say no, particularly if it's family or something like that. There's so many opportunities in which, or political issues where your advocacy for a particular political position will come across as cold-hearted in some way. Or, yeah, I mean, altruism is there in all of us. It's impossible to avoid, given the overwhelming prevalence in it in every aspect of our culture, and therefore our upbringing. All right. Michael, how does Obama's nihilism compare to Trump's? In what sense did you see Obama as acting nihilistically? Well, I mean, certainly his talking about the moral equivalency between America and the rest of the world is a form of tearing America down, which I think I said at the time that he was the first anti-American president. I think he's now the second, but I think he was the first anti-American president. He purposely tore America down. He explicitly claimed there was America's no better than anybody else. By the way, Trump does the same thing. So I think that was a form of nihilism. I think, for example, his insistence on going with Obamacare in spite of all the problems that were known, all the negative consequences that would happen that were known. He crammed it through and worked hard to get it through. Maybe the most nihilistic speech he ever gave was the "You didn't build that" speech, which I've talked about many, many, many times in many of my talks. The "you didn't build that" speech, the idea that you didn't build it. That idea that you're not responsible for your own success, your success is dependent on all these other people and ultimately on the government. You remember he had this woman who, her life ultimately depended on good government policy. Everything was about. that was so much about tearing down, ripping down anybody's success, anybody's prospects. So he definitely had nihilistic tendencies. I don't think he was totally nihilistic. I don't think in Leonard Peikoff's categorization, I don't think he was totally D2. He was a D1, D2. He was on the way to D2. Elements of D2, elements of anti-value and destruction. Not quite completely solidly there. Silvanos, $20. Thank you, Silvanos. Have you read any of Neil Gaiman's books? Coraline, American Gods. No, I haven't. Are they good? Worth reading? All right, Shazbot says, extra money for one song review because you don't like Metallica. Oh, so this is extra money for the Metallica song review, okay? Yes, I need to get to that. I will get to that. Thank you, Shazbot. Thank you, Shazbot. We'll get there. I have not read, and I have not read the Graveyard Book. Oh, that's the Silvanos. But no, I have not read any of his books. Are they good? So I assume you're asking because they're good and you think I should read them. Let me just copy that so I have it in writing somewhere. All right, we got more questions coming in. All right. Savannah says, have you seen the expose from the New York Times on Neil Gaiman? Looks like the power got to his head and he played fast and loose with the babysitters. No, I have not read it. Since I haven't read his books, I wouldn't have known who he is. So I really wouldn't have been that curious about reading an expose about him. Should I? Should I read the books? Should I read the expose? Richard, did you just say that Trump thinks America is no better than anyone else, like Obama did? I'm no Trump fan, but doubt that he would say so. No, but he basically undermines. No, he has actually said it. Now, I'll go back and find the quotes for you. He said in 2016, America is his country. That's why it should be America first. It's not because America's better. It's not because America, has a better constitution, better rules of law. It's not because America's freer. It's because America is ours. That's what makes it. That's why he's America first. So he does not articulate, he does not believe in American exceptionalism. I'll give you one example of this, right? When he said something positive about Putin, this is in the run-up to 2016, he was on a news show, I can't remember what it was, but I watched it. So I watched this video of this, so this is not made up. And he was asked, well, what about the fact that Putin murders journalists? And Trump's response was, yeah, we murder journalists too. It's like, it's not like America doesn't murder people. We murder people. We're just like them. And time again, when he has been questioned about, but what about this bad thing that this person did? Well, we do that. We do all of that. It's not like we're any better than them. So, no, I think he doesn't. He holds it in his mind that America's ours, therefore I'm supporting America. He doesn't hold it in his mind, America's special. America's built on a special foundation. It's better than any other place on planet Earth. Doesn't hold it that. It's part of why, he never talks about the Constitution. He never talks about American values. He never talks about anything that is America in terms of ideas. He also, I think the whole immigration question for him is, people are coming here because we happen to be rich, but it's not about freedom. It's not about liberty. So I'll stand by that statement. Raphael says, best stock picks for Alex Epstein's energy revolution, not looking for investment advice. I don't have any. Partially, I think it's already probably priced. But, you know, if they're successful, then there's probably some nuclear energy companies you can find out there that might be worth buying. Some oil, maybe some of the smaller oil companies, maybe that haven't gone up quite as much. Probably the big ones have been priced completely, maybe the smaller ones. Yeah, so I think, you know, if a friend of both Alex and mine's, Bud Brigham, I think owns one or two publicly traded companies. You might want to look at them. So I think it's basically, I think I'd look at where the market has not already priced all this, right? Because everybody knows Trump is going to be good for energy. So stock prices of energy companies have already reflected that. Now, you also would have to look at who's going to benefit from rationalizing the electricity markets. That'll be interesting. And I don't know what the answer to that is. Are there any publicly traded players in that space that you could trade? Justin, Trump negotiated a great deal. I'll celebrate it. That's pretty disgusting, Justin. It's a horrible deal. It's a horrible deal if you believe in freedom and liberty and if you believe in Israel's rights to exist. It is a wonderful deal if you're a Hamas supporter. So I guess you might be a Hamas supporter. You can, you know, this is again the blind loyalty to Trump. Trump negotiated, therefore it's a good deal. When Biden negotiated exactly the same deal, it was a bad deal. But now they're literally celebrating. They're going out of their way to celebrate. When if it was Biden, they would have condemned it and been bored by it. But now it's exciting because Trump did it. It's just the Trump mindless syndrome is just such a fascinating phenomenon to see people here on the chat, super chat even, engaged in Trump mindlessness. Quite something, quite something. Iron Meerkat. On one hand, I owe everyone an apology. On the other, I want to crawl in a hole and not show my face. F this. Why do you owe an apology? Because I know why Iron Meerkat feels that way. You know why Iron Meerkat feels that way? Because Iron Meerkat was one of the people who came on the chat right here, on the Yaron Brook Show, and said, Donald Trump is going to be great for Israel. I'm going to vote for Donald Trump just on the basis of that one issue. And by the way, Gaza should be destroyed, which is always at the end of his emails. And sadly, it hasn't worked out that way. I get it, I'm Meerkat, and I accept your apology. Adri says, thank you for the news digest, $50. Really, really appreciate that, Adri. Thank you, guys. We've blown through the first hour's, fundraising, so I really, really appreciate that. Adri made that possible. Liam, animals have some conceptual knowledge and capacity for free will. You can train a dog to sit, stand, roll over. Dogs also know their names. These concepts stay in their mind. I don't think they stay as concepts. They are perceptions. They are memories of sounds, memories of things. They're not concepts. They don't hold them. They're not conceptual in any way, I don't think. Now, I'm not an expert on animal cognition, but I do not think that's conceptual knowledge. I mean, let me just say that Iron Meerkat, him coming on and saying that is unbelievably rare on this show. How many people in this show have been wrong about lots of things in the chat, and you never hear from them again? They either disappear, or you never hear from them again, or they certainly never apologize, or they spend the whole time rationalizing it away. The fact that Iron Meerkat can face the fact that he was wrong and then come out and apologize, thumbs up to you. We all hoped you were right. Hopper Campbell wants to know, when am I posting the San Francisco talk? Either this weekend or sometime next week, probably on a day where I'm not doing a show. I will post it. It's ready for posting, but I don't want to double it up with the show. Paul says, with Gazans returning home, will Israelis be able to return to their homes in the north? I think in the short run, yeah, sure. I mean, there's enough troops in the buffer zone surrounding Gaza to be able to secure the Israelis going home. In the long run, I don't know why anybody would be willing to live anywhere near the Gaza border. The Israeli government has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that they are unwilling to secure the lives of Israelis, to secure their lives, in particular, of those Israelis living near the border. And they might be secure for the next 5 years, but who knows after that? Who knows how long it'll take Israel to fall asleep again and allow something like October 7th to happen again. Michael, we've had fascistic populist presidents in the past we overcame. FDR LBJ and Nixon were far more fascist than Trump will ever be. I don't think any of that is right. I don't think they're more fascistic in that sense. They passed more, large-scale statist bills. But all of those bills that they passed, FDR with the New Deal, LBJ with the Great Society, Nixon with all his environmental regulations, all of those are on the books now. So that's the starting point. None of them had as much of a disdain for the American Constitution and the American people as Donald Trump has. None of them had as much disdain for the American system of government, for the electoral process, for elections as Donald Trump has. None of them literally tried to use whatever means they could think of to overturn a legitimate election. So no, I don't think they were all statists. They all grew government significantly. By the way, remember, Donald Trump was also responsible for lockdowns. So during COVID. So no, Donald Trump is an unbelievable statist who's taken all the statist policies of those first three presidents you mentioned, preserving them and expanding on them, and at the same time undermining the very nature and foundation of the American system of government. Gail, I'm losing faith in most Americans. They are against war at any cost. Well, I don't know if most Americans. I don't know how to tell that. I'm not sure that's most Americans, but certainly it's a lot of Americans, and certainly it is a scary time. Hey, Yaron, I watched the Alex Jordan Peterson interview. Thank you for the recommendation. Do you have other long-form content to recommend or people to look into? Not really. As I mentioned yesterday, I think it was, I don't really listen to much long form. I don't have the time. I find Jordan Peterson interesting, but often interesting in a negative way. Alex Epstein is always good. What's his name? Lex Friedman, sometimes good, sometimes less good. Sometimes interesting, sometimes just not of interest to me. I never listen to Joe Rogan. I don't listen to, there are lots of good podcasts out there, so don't take me wrong. Lots of them. I just don't have time for them. A lot of them on finance and economics and lots of different things. I wish I had time for all of them. But if I'm going to read and I'm going to prep for this show and I'm going to have some time for entertainment, relaxation, whatever you call it, I just don't have time for podcasts. I'm glad you guys do have time for the Yaron Brook Show. All right, esoteric dichotomy. Hey, Yaron, have you ever liked any comic books? When I was a kid, but not really since then. So, and even then, I wasn't crazy about comic books and never liked the superhero ones particularly. I can't say I've ever gone through a comic book phase. I think I read some comic books when I was young, but no. The answer ultimately has to be no. Matthew, for me, both consequences and intentions matter. Are some of the Trump intelligence supporters consequentialist? intelligent supporters, consequentialists. Well, but the consequences are going to be awful too. So I agree with you that both intentions and consequence matters, but I don't think the Trump supporters care about either. I don't think it's about consequences or intentions. I think it's about bombast. It's about loyalty. It's about mindlessness, Trump mindlessness syndrome. You know, so are they I mean, the consequence of not being that great. For example, this deal with Hamas not being great. So it's about sticking with a candidate no matter what he does. Sticking with your man, mindlessly. All right. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate the support. I'm going to go get a little bit of rest before I teach. I'm still not over this cold. And I will see you all tomorrow about the same time for another Yaron Brook show. Thank you. Thank you to all the super chatters. Thank you to all the listeners. And don't forget to like the show before you leave. Put up a little like. We've got 140 people watching, but only like 60 likes. Let's increase those likes. And don't forget to support the show monthly on Patreon. See you all tomorrow. Probably a longer show. Maybe. Hope so. Bye, everybody.